both the young ladies, and I'm speaking specifically Tanya and Beetle,
Okay.
they both had their own story. It was just the way that they both dealt with what their trauma was. Two totally different, paths. And so that's always just interesting to me. They both had siblings and
Mm-hmm.
they both took different paths from the siblings. People always try to say, well, that's that person's past. Okay, well, but you don't have to succumb to, or your future, it doesn't have to be dictated by your past.
Welcome back to the Motherly Shift, the space where we explore the stories, patterns, and emotional legacies that shape mothers, daughters, and the women we become. Over the last few episodes, we sat with Tana and Beetle as they shared honest and deeply personal journeys through trauma, emotional neglect, and the long path to healing. Their stories opened the door for so many of us to reflect on our own experiences and the generational dynamics that influence how we show up in the world. Today, we're taking those conversations a step further. We're joined by independently licensed therapist Cherie White, who brings more than 20 years of experience working with individuals, couples, and families through trauma, grief, relational conflict, and emotional healing. Cherie listened closely to Tana's and Beetle's episodes, so closely that she said once she pressed play, she couldn't stop. These stories touched on themes she sees every day in her work: attachment, emotional invisibility, survival strategies, resilience, and the complicated ways childhood wounds echo into adulthood. In this episode, Cherie helps us pull back the curtain on why these stories resonated so deeply. She offers insight into the emotional patterns we inherit, the ways we learn to protect ourselves, and what it takes to break cycles we didn't ask for but sometimes still carry. She also sheds light on the courage it takes to confront painful truths, examine what shaped us, and choose a different way forward. If you've ever wondered why healing can feel messy, why certain relationships trigger you, or how your childhood might be influencing your adult life, even in ways you don't always recognize, this conversation is going to speak to you. So take a breath, settle in, and join me as we revisit Tana's and Beetle's journeys through the eyes of someone who sees both the pain and the remarkable strength behind their stories. Let's get into it. What are you thinking so far about which, or have you listened to all of them or just the ones that, well, I sent you all of them, but
I pretty much listened to all of them. I guess I'm caught up. I think the last one was generationally speaking.
yes, yes,
Yeah. And that was with the four women, the
yes.
mom and her daughters. Yes. So yeah, I'm caught up, but but I almost couldn't stop listening. Once I started listening, I almost couldn't stop.
Really? Now, why do you say that? This
You
is
know
so,
what? I'm always, and I think maybe that's the therapist in me.
yeah.
I'm such an observer. And so I do like to hear people's stories and how the stories shaped who people are. And when, especially when people come to the realization and understanding of how, their past, kind of impacted their life, what their life journey looked like based off of their, past
Right,
history.
right,
So I'm
right.
just always interested in, hearing. I watch a lot of documentaries, about people's stories,
Hmm.
no matter how graphic they are, just because I'm always interested in the how we got here.
Very interesting. Well, I definitely have the right person. So, do you have a favorite story or an account so far? I'm just curious personally.
Um, you know what? I'm not gonna say a favorite, but the one that stood out, I'm not even gonna say stood out the most because both the young ladies, and I'm speaking specifically Tanya and Beetle,
Okay.
they both had their own story. It was just the way that they both dealt with what their trauma was. Two totally different, paths. And so that's always just interesting to me. They both had siblings and
Mm-hmm.
they both took different paths from the siblings. People always try to say, well, that's that person's past. Okay, well, but you don't have to succumb to, or your future, it doesn't have to be dictated by your past.
Right.
You can overcome. So it's always, okay, well, why did this sibling do this, but the other siblings did that?
Yeah.
It's
That's
just,
that's
it's
always my question.
mm-hmm,
How is it that two siblings grow up in the same house with the same parents? Let's just look at that demographic.
but how they internalize it could be totally different.
Yeah, that's
Some
true.
people grow up in a dysfunctional system and that's what they know. So that's what they identify with.
Mm.
Whereas somebody else in the same dysfunctional, like, this ain't cool. I don't like this.
And
And they
that
work to overcome that.
and that's what's remarkable to me about Tana and Beetle's stories is because given their accounts, they have completely turned their past on its ear and did a complete 180 and
Mm-hmm.
and are intentional about having a completely different life with that past in their rear view. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's remarkable. I almost feel like it's a golden lottery ticket to have the opportunity to have spoken to two people who I feel had quite extreme, experiences that are, by all intents and purposes, thriving quite well.
Mm-hmm. But what I will tell you is, I mean, they have remarkable resiliency,
Yeah.
but their resiliency is also how they survived.
So it kicked in as a survival mechanism.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
I was
it's
like, she got me working and thinking, but that's why I had to, I wish I hadn't have waited until the end to give me more time to process, from a therapeutic standpoint.
mhm.
But I'm glad I did wait though, because I was able to absorb
Right, right,
everything without the distraction for everything else that I was doing. So I was able to kind of sit with what I was listening to.
right, right. That's interesting.
Jeesh. I felt
Yeah,
like I was in a counseling session without being in a counseling session.
I know, right? I know. I mean, when I listen back to when I look back and I'm listening as I'm editing the recordings and I'm listening, I'm thinking I'm just gonna fly through it because I've already heard these stories and I just want it to sound right and be laid out correctly, but I get reabsorbed into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's such incredible stories and accounts. It's just definitely a point of interest for me. I feel privileged to be able to talk to those who have been willing to talk to me and
Right.
share their stories. It's amazing. I know Beetle had mentioned as she was going through therapy, she is extremely analytical and
Mm-hmm.
she really likes to understand the why of things. And I think she
Mm-hmm.
said that. And she said somebody remarked to her that she should be, you know, teaching about the brain
Or studied.
and she should study. And that's the thing that my husband picked up on. He was like, that I heard that and I thought to myself, she should be studied. Like this is remarkable.
Right. And that's why I said I don't have a favorite, but she stood out the most because literally from, that early age and what she was missing. And the crazy part about it is, at least with Tanya, she had her grandmother.
Right.
But Beto, it was like so many people failed her in the
Yeah.
grand scheme of things. But yet she still, you talk about a testimony.
Amazing. So let me ask this. We're going to jump right into it. What happens emotionally to a daughter who grows up feeling invisible or unsupported, as both Tana and Beetle describe?
Okay, so there's no cookie cutter answer for that. And
Mhm.
the reason why I say that is because it's all rooted in their attachments.
Mhm.
I'll speak to Tanya's attachment first. Because she had her grandmother, but she also was, how it showed up for her in terms of attachment is she propelled forward as the caregiver for her siblings.
Mhm.
So a lot of her childhood was stunted in that. She was, propelled into that where she felt responsible
Mhm.
for being the caretaker even before her grandmother got sick. I mean, once, before that, she ended up signing off on the dotted line until after her grandmother passed. But earlier on, she was the one who was, basically acting mother.
Right.
Grandmother was the overseer because she was more of the adult, but Tanya took on a lot of that. And that showed up in how she, got into relationships or how she, kind of raised her kids.
Mhm.
So a lot of, how we see ourselves is rooted in the formation of attachments.
Right. Whereas in comparison with Beetle, it was literally like, and I hate to sound so cold, but like she was furniture. She was just a part of the backdrop.
That's pretty much what it was. It was like she was not a part of the same family. And when she referenced the book The Invisible Child, I'm like, that's exactly what that was. She
Mhm.
might not have experienced physical abuse, but
Mhm.
talk about emotional abuse, the lack of nurturing, in that. And when I say it's more rare for eh, kids to kind of go through this trauma and not have any adult,
Right.
really step up and say, hey, no. Now, she might have had pockets of people, but from what I gathered, that was far and few between.
Right. It
It
wasn't
wasn't on a
consistent at
it
all.
wasn't on a consistent basis. And so her resiliency and survival was, well, you know what? I gotta depend on me.
Mhm.
This is, even if she's not articulating that, she knew that that's where she knew it didn't feel good. She knew she wanted more for herself. And so she was the overachiever.
Mhm.
But that was her survival because when she thought about, I think you used the word compensate.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, it wasn't compensation. I was running.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was her survival. Her survival was rooted in so early on because she recognized that I don't really have anybody else.
Right.
She was also one to, she didn't know. I think she even said it, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So she didn't know what feeling she was. So a lot of her emotions, a lot of that was suppressed
Mm.
early on. And where it sounded like it came out was it basketball that she played?
Right. She was actually quite an athlete. She played
Yeah.
basketball, lacrosse, and several other sports
So
through.
it probably came out through her emotions came out. Those suppressed emotions came out by way of her athleticism.
And she even mentioned that she would be um, overly upset with a loss or her
Yeah.
performance. And I think you hit on something like because she hadn't dealt with uh, appropriate emotional responses or
Mhm.
whatever, that being her freedom also became an outlet for her.
Right. That was how her emotional suppression showed up,
Hmm.
or her the lack of attachment style showed up for her, is through her emotional release.
Right.
She didn't know why she was feeling the way she was feeling.
Yeah.
She just knows she was off. Well, why is somebody else looking happy? Why are they
Right.
sitting
And then
around
that used to
smiling all the
piss her off.
time?
Like, why are you so happy? So,
Yeah, I was amazed. But you know what? Also, what stood out with her is, which is rare. She sought therapy early on.
hmm,
She sought therapy early on in her college career
right.
because, again, her resiliency is like, you know what? I don't want to be that.
Right.
I know I'm not, something is going on. So I need to figure out, and that was rooted in, I need to know the why. And I challenge people all the time when they come to therapy, when you can get to the root of the why, you can really start to heal.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, people can heal without the why, but there's still going to be this underlying stuff
They're just
where
addressing symptoms.
that they're just addressing the symptoms. So you can kind of repeat some stuff if you really don't get to that understanding and the root cause of the underlying contributing factors of where you are right now.
Hmm. This is just so amazing and interesting. Let me ask this question. You may have touched on it a little bit, but um, how does chronic emotional neglect shape the ability to trust and attach and communicate in adulthood?
Well, it can definitely disrupt it.
Hmm.
I mean, for sure. When individuals are dealing with trauma and they haven't dealt with the trauma, how
Hmm.
it's going to translate in adulthood, it may be different. You might be the individual who becomes very anxious because the world around us is unpredictable when it comes to trauma, because that's how our brain is wired. You
Right.
know, you are conditioned to, I can't trust people. You are
Yeah,
being
both women,
emotionally.
but yet both women
Mm-hmm.
were married. They're both divorced. So
Mm-hmm.
they made an attempt to trust on some level.
They did. They did. But also, I didn't, I can't remember hearing it from Vito, but I know with Tanya, she talked about the red flags being there,
Hmm.
but she overlooked the red flags because she didn't think she was worthy of anything else.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
let me take this person. And there were some good things about him for
Hmm.
sure, but ultimately, it wasn't what she really needed. It
Right.
only solved a surface level thing. It
Hmm.
gave her what she wanted, or the perceived. Everybody wants to be loved. And
Yeah.
so if this man is showing me something, guess what? I'm gonna make them red flags. They not so red, they kind of pink.
Yeah.
So I tell people a red flag is a red flag all day long. You can't change the color, but that's when people change the color of the red flag, it's because they want an emotional need that needs to be met.
Hmm.
And so that's the motivation behind the I'm changing the red flag. It's not so bad.
Right. Right. And in my layman's terms, I guess what I'm just thinking is, given all that they accepted uh, in their past and growing up, a couple red flags is probably like par for the course.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
If that's all it is compared to what I dealt with,
Right.
that's nothing.
Yeah.
And so you end up accepting and being okay with a lot of things. Now, with Beetle, I think the difference was, again, what she had going for her was therapy early on, because she said, I wasn't even really thinking about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to think about kids because I wanted to deal with this other stuff first,
Mm-hmm.
which, again, in the mind of a young person, so she was really kind of wise beyond her years, and probably a lot of that isolation and solitude,
Mm-hmm.
had a, although it wasn't good for a child, it still had its benefits.
Yeah, she definitely spent a lot of time with herself
Mm-hmm.
and really evaluating and thinking about just the complete, wholeness of who she is and still does. And I would
Mm-hmm.
agree with you. Definitely wise beyond her years, but also tremendously blessed. Like, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but even through all of that dysfunction, I just can't help but state that God's hands had to be on both of their
Uh-huh.
lives from the beginning. And although their experiences are not ideal or healthy in any respect, just looking at the women that they have become and have
Mm-hmm.
shaped and molded themselves into, There's no other explanation in my mind except that God had to be instrumental
And
in
they both seem to have
yeah,
that faith
exactly.
as
Yeah.
at the core cause of how they're dealing with or have dealt with a lot of this
Mhm.
stuff. Without faith people can become hopeless,
Right.
and I didn't see
Absolutely.
the hopelessness in or hear the hopelessness in any of their stories.
And we have to remember too, these are adult women with children at this point. I
Hmm.
would imagine they had periods of hopelessness, but have really worked hard. Because I think even in speaking with Tana, um, not all aspects of her life did she reflect upon as being hopeless, but just the idea of like when she mentioned that she just is a Hallmark movie girl
Hmm.
and that's the lifestyle she wants, and to sit on her porch with somebody and just be happy, like that was her hope and dream, but it kind of spoke a little bit to a thread of hopelessness too.
Well, I didn't necessarily feel the hopelessness, and the only reason being is because she said, I mean, I don't have it right now, but I'm
Right.
still striving to get there. So I still feel like she has hope.
Okay.
And I think in hearing your story,
Mm-hmm.
it still fostered some hope.
Right.
Even if it's on a thin thread, I still think that it's there. I also feel like she recognizes that I need to do some consistent therapy. And that was the big difference between her story and Beetle's story, is that
Right.
Beetle has done the work. A lot of Tanya's stuff probably was disrupted in the caretaking of
Right.
not only her children but her siblings.
Yeah.
And
Before we
so when you have other people to focus on, you don't focus on yourself. And that's one of the things that women,
yeah.
with or without trauma, is we often neglect and put ourselves to the side because we're doing other things. And
But I
even like I say,
think
outside of
we
Mhm.
enjoy the distraction, particularly when
yeah,
there's a bunch of dysfunction around. I mean, even on a
absolutely, because who wants to deal with their dysfunction?
yeah, who
It's
wants to deal
easier
with
to
reality?
it absolutely is easier to deal with somebody else. If I'm fixing, because I'll challenge clients all the time when they want to tell me about other people's stuff that they've been helping with. I'm like, okay, but what about you?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm not sure if you are aware, because part of therapy is helping them to gain some insight. When
Mm-hmm.
you're focused on your mom, or when you're focused on your brother or your sister, you focus on your aunt, what you're doing, that's a distraction from you focusing on you, because
Right.
focusing on you might not be that comfortable, it might not feel that comfortable, and we often run away from what feels uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
But growth happens with uncomfortability.
Yeah.
You just have to be willing to sit in it.
Is there a difference between intentional detachment and trauma-induced independence?
You say, is it a difference?
Yes.
Is it a difference between, say it one more
Intentional.
time?
Is there a difference between intentional detachment and trauma-induced independence?
They're both survival
Mhm.
tactics.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like if I can avoid it, I can avoid it. But if I'm
Right.
in it, I'm still kind of avoiding it. I'm just in the mixed of. Like some
Right.
people operate, or so they think, is to perceive that they're operating in chaos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To put them outside of that, it's like, wait a minute, hold on. What is this? it's
Right.
it's too quiet now.
Right. Something's wrong.
Uh-huh. But they're both survival strategies.
Right.
Again, where the attachment style comes in at. Some people become very anxious, whereas you can have those which is total opposite. I'm gonna avoid it.
Mm-hmm. How can someone love a parent who is never emotionally safe and still create boundaries?
having to do just that, create the boundaries.
So the boundary.
I can love my parent, but that doesn't mean I need to allow my parent to be abusive to me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
once you recognize what that look like, I believe in loving people from afar if that's what it is.
Yeah.
I don't wish people, you know, any harm, but you keep that over there.
So one thing I did ask Beetle is if there was anything that she thought she would want her mom to know about her, or if she thought that having some element of closure with her mom would have been beneficial, which she did not have the opportunity to do either of those things. What are your thoughts about that?
But I almost feel like, you know, and she alluded to it, like that's not the type of relationship I had.
Right,
So when you don't have that mother daughter type relationship, it's like, I mean, what what could I possibly want her to know? What do I want somebody to know who didn't want to know me?
right. That, and she essentially said as much too.
Mm-hmm. And that's why that was hard for her, because she like, I mean, that's just wasn't where we are now. I think she mentioned at a birthday party, somebody came up to her and said that her, you know, her mother was sorry for how she treated her, but that meant nothing for her because there was no action. I don't know if her mom wanted the door to be open, and based on that she wanted Beetle to come to her, but Beetle, like, that was her boundary. She absolutely not.
Yeah,
If she wanted to have that conversation with me because of what she did, it was her responsibility to do so,
right,
because
right.
she's come to terms and she's accepted that this is what the relationship is. I mean, not only with her mother, but other people in her family too. Even
Yeah,
though she made attempts to, okay, I mean, go around, I'm gonna expose my kids to him. Even in her adult years and having kids herself, her family was still absent.
yeah,
That was so heartbreaking.
yeah. It is heartbreaking. Like,
But that was her reality, and she's accepted that that was her reality. Because you can't make people be where you are.
that's true.
You just can't. In any relationship, I always use the example of a boxing match. If in order for a boxing match to happen, two people got to be in the ring. At least two people got to be in the ring.
Right. Yeah.
The what do you call the person who's in the ref? The
Yeah.
ref is the therapist, so to speak.
So you're in the ring with them. Don't catch any strays.
Oh, trust me, I've gotten some, but oftentimes it's displaced anger. You're not mad at me.
Right.
You
Man.
might be mad because I'm bringing some things out, and that's okay, because I accept that that's a part of the therapeutic process. If I make everything so easy and so comfortable, guess what? Nobody learns anything.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really grows, and so it is my role to at sometimes put people on the hot seat or make people feel uncomfortable so that they can work towards being comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people don't like that,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
What are your thoughts on Tana saying that she does not believe she has had 5 conversations with her mom while she was sober in her entire life?
I wish I could say I didn't understand, but I understand, because her mom wasn't in a space, especially through her addiction, to
Mm,
give her that. So it wasn't surprising. It
yeah.
wasn't. It's super unfortunate, but it wasn't. But the flip side of that, again, going back to her grandmother, she
Mm,
at least had her grandmother,
yeah.
whereas Beetle didn't really have anybody.
Right.
So that was her, also her saving grace, because things could have been a lot different for Tanya. They could have been a lot worse. And you think, well, how could it have gotten worse? It could have been a lot worse. Actually, for both scenarios, things could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
Depending on, again, your early attachment and how you internalize trauma makes a difference. And
Mm-hmm.
both of them have, the wherewithal or the willingness to rewrite what that looks like for them.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I don't want to stay here. I don't want to be a product of my environment and then carry on that same thing to the next generation. Both of them were very intentional about breaking those generational curses.
Absolutely. But how do they? I guess I'm just baffled by how were they able to have this amount of success without any models of healthy parenting? Because they were both very intentional on, I don't want what I had, I want this, and have created that for
Because
themselves.
they knew internally, they knew what they had and they knew what they didn't want.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in trauma and you say, I want a better relationship with my kids than I had with my mom, and you mean that to your core, you're going to do just that to make sure that things are different, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. What does
Whereas you might have
love
some
look like?
siblings like, oh, well, that's just
Yeah.
who I come from. That's
Mm.
just how we do things.
So practically speaking, though, what does reparenting yourself look like? Like for anybody listening, like who feels maybe they're hopeless, maybe they feel like their situation is far removed from what's been shared in the conversations with Tana and with Beetle. How would you suggest reparenting?
Reparenting yourself is giving yourself what you feel like you didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Again, starting with self, that self-love. We tell ourselves through trauma that I'm not worthy. Or I know with Tanya, again, heart went out to her where her mom, literally told her,
Yeah.
I was supposed to abort you. Now
Uh,
what do you do with that? You're
right.
fat. So a lot of her self-worth was rooted in how she looked
Yeah.
and how she felt about herself. I think Beatles' dad told her you was a mistake, and
Yeah.
everything about her upbringing said that.
Mm,
But
mm,
it was in something that was within them that said, "I this is not the life that I want for me."
right.
And so their resiliency again was their survival. This is how they worked through that.
What is the psychological impact of the expression of regret for a child's existence?
All right, let me think about that for a minute. You said, "What
Time.
is?"
What is the psychological impact of the expression of regret about a child's existence? Because ironically, both Beetle and Tana had that same experience.
What was the psychological impact?
The psychological impact of the expression of regret about a child's existence.
Meaning the
So, for
regret from the
example,
parent
this
standpoint.
mother, so I'm the child, I'm the daughter, and I've heard my mother say, well, I couldn't abort you, or I'm Beetle, and I heard it said, you were a mistake, you're not supposed to be here.
You mean how do they conceptualize that, or just the overall impact that it's going to have?
Let's go both ways.
I mean, okay, so they could. Okay, well, what's wrong with me? Some got to be wrong with me. So you have this in internal shame,
Mm,
as it relates to what their parent is saying. I mean, I don't know how any child could hear a parent say you were an accident or you were supposed to be aborted.
hmm.
What am I supposed to think that I'm good? I'm gonna think I'm broken and everything that happens to me bad. Well, this is because I'm a burden. I'm not supposed to be happy because
Right.
the people who are supposed to love and protect me tell me I'm not even supposed to be here.
Mm,
So there's this then fragile, conflicted sense of self.
yeah.
In one sense, I have my parents telling me this, but in the other, I may have some at that time, some, helplessness, so something switches.
Mm-hmm.
And something clearly switched in both of them, which is why again their resilience was their survival. And I'll keep repeating that because that's exactly what it was. With Beetle, she didn't have to be the caretaker for her brothers.
Right.
What
Right.
she was the observer of what her siblings got versus what she got.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it was almost as if like, is she really in the same family? It was almost like she was outside of the window, outside
Right.
of the house, looking in and not seeing herself in that image.
Right.
So you tend to take that on. You might have a sense of or a fear of rejection or fear of, if I allow this person to get close to me, they're going to disappoint me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, although I saw neither having an anxious, meaning I'm going to cling to other people, I didn't necessarily see the anxious, part of. There
Right.
could have been some disorganized detachment, and
Mm.
that's where that fear of rejection or closeness, but also avoidant attachment, because that's how you're going to then protect yourself. Say that again.
What is disorganized attachment? I don't understand that.
I mean, just disorganized attachment is just, kind of your fear of, there's a lot of internal conflict, but you
Okay.
got a fear of closeness. You have a fear of rejection, and so your relationships may not be as stable.
Mm.
Well, only one attachment style is stable, and that's secure attachment.
Right. Right.
So it really just depends, but I may have saw more of some disorganized and maybe some overlap, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see a lot of secure, and I didn't see a lot of anxious, but it also can manifest itself differently.
Mm-hmm. What would anxious attachment look like?
Anxious, you might be super clingy.
Mm-hmm.
You might have a fear of abandonment that can overlap a little bit with fear of rejection. And
Okay.
so you get anxious if you think someone is going to leave you, because anxious can often lead to people pleasing.
Mm. Okay.
I'm giving in to what you need versus what I need because I would rather for you to stay.
Hmm.
I'm going to overlook those red flags because I need you to stay.
Okay. Mm. What is
That's
it?
one of the things that I ask clients if who struggle with relationships. I often ask them what their attachment style is, and so we'll go over exactly, because most of the time they don't know. And so typically, somebody with an anxious attachment style might be paired with somebody with an avoidance attachment style. And an
Okay.
avoidance is, I don't want to talk about the heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go deep. So anytime the anxious person is trying to attach, well, I need to talk about this. I need to know what's going on, and da 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 da. The avoided person is running. They
Mm-hmm.
might leave. So then the anxious person feels abandoned. But I often see those two together,
Mm-hmm.
which typically does not make for a healthy relationship.
Exactly. Exactly. What are the other attachment styles, just for the edification of everybody listening and for myself?
Well, the main ones is secure, which is what everybody wants to be,
Right.
disorganized and anxious. Now there might be some subsections to that, but I really just kind of stick to secure, anxious, and disorganized.
Okay.
We
Okay.
all want to strive to have a secure attachment style, meaning you're so secure in yourself, and you don't have to worry about if somebody is leaving out after an argument that they're not going to come back,
Mm-hmm.
or let me forget my what I'm saying. I know I might be right, but I'm gonna give in to the person who's wrong because I don't want them to leave. I need to know that they're coming back.
Right.
So the anxious person might be the one who typically apologizes versus the one who's avoidant may never apologize. or take accountability
I
for
see
their
a bit
stuff.
of that. I don't know. Okay, so uh to be fully transparent, I feel like there's what you're describing could describe my dynamic with my mom on several levels.
Hmm.
Not that I think she's going to abandon me, but I will, maybe after time, maybe after being really irritated about something, I will go and apologize. I will go and start calling her again. I
Hmm.
will just pick up where we left off for the sake of the relationship to remain intact on some level. I don't have the fear or anxiety that she'll abandon me or that she'll go away. I've always taken that as being a dutiful daughter.
But subconsciously you may be. You just don't
Mm-hmm.
identify that that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was like, wait a second, this sounds familiar
It was
because
like I'd rather have some. Yes, I want to be the dutiful daughter, but I'd rather have some
mm-hmm.
connectedness to my mother versus none at all. And
Hmm.
so I'm going to be the one to concede, even though in my heart of hearts, I know I'm right.
Right.
Because for you, it's not about who's right, who's wrong. I want the relationship.
That can't be healthy. How do you get past that?
It is not. It is not. But I think, you have to know who you are as a person. And I'm going to speak now to the mom and her daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard in a couple of different ones that I'm just you learn to pick and choose what your battles are.
As said in generationally speaking,
Yeah.
yes.
So I'll say I don't argue with people where I know I can't win the argument. And winning the argument doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that if I know that the sky is blue, but you saying it's red, then guess what? I'm not changing your mind
Yeah.
because you don't have the flexibility to say, well, wait a minute. Let me see if it's really blue. They want to see that it's red, so that's what it's going to be with them.
Right.
And so for you, it sounds like you've just gotten really good at picking and choosing your battles. Now, when you think about whether or not that's healthy, it depends on how you internalize that for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I the healthiest that I can be in spite of where me
Right.
and my mom's relationship is?
Yeah. And I think that's something I'm just now getting to. Um, as is evident by the fact that I'm doing this podcast. Like that realization is just something that, like, because it is a wrestling.
Hmm.
It started off as a wrestling because I would be very irritated, disturbed, like wanting to completely be done with that relationship. And then something in me would say, but that's your mom, and everybody's getting older. And is whatever the uh the argument or the disagreement or whatever was said, was it such that you would be willing to forfeit the relationship? And every time I've decided that it wasn't that serious and
Hmm.
conceded, like you said, I just challenged the anxious part. But hey, you're the professional, perhaps. Like there's an element in that, but
There could be, right, and I'm not saying full
yeah.
fledged because I don't see you as, and knowing you, I don't see you as an anxious person. I'm just saying subconsciously there could be some anxiousness because you recognize that time is short. Life is too
Right.
short. We're all on borrowed time. So you want to at least know that I've tried to do everything that I could that was within my control to
Mm-hmm.
have the relationship and reconcile that your mom may not be there.
Yeah.
She might not be where you are, where you're trying to forge this relationship. You're trying to kind of get to the why. You're trying to get to the healing part
But
of
then
it.
I also think that because of how I have determined to handle it, she always feels vindicated or that she was right in the first place. And we just continue this crazy cycle.
But guess what? You can't control that piece of it. But that's where you might reinforce some of it. And I'm not saying, because I don't tell people to cut your parents off, cut your man off, cut your kids off. You know, again, that's an all individual choice, and depending on where your boundaries are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, if you were allowing your mom to then dictate how you parented your kids, then you would have to kind of take a look at that. But I don't see that.
Right.
Now, maybe some of mom's influence shaped how you parented your kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's again, that's where we learn, you know, parents, or I should say adults, underestimate kids all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do as I say, not as I do. Well, guess what? That's easier said than done. Because
Right.
if I'm watching you stick your finger in the fire, knowing that you're gonna get burned, guess what? I'm gonna want to stick my finger in the fire.
Right. And you're sending mixed messages. Like
Absolutely. You are
we
absolutely sending mixed messages.
we started this whole thing with the conversation about how we learn from our mothers and daughters. And a lot of it is observation that informs who we are and the decisions that we make. So you
Mhm.
cannot, for a logical person, tell me one thing and turn
And do
around
something
something
else.
totally separate.
And even if you're not saying, do as I say, not as I do, they're still watching that though.
Right.
They're still picking that up. So, you know, I'll share with individuals that I'm working with. We can say all day long, I don't want to be like my mother. I don't want to be like my father. But guess what? You're going to take remnants of that. Might not be full fledged, but to some degree, you're going to hold up a mirror and you're going to see your mother. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to see your mother's reflection in the mirror. When you look at, because I know I've seen it, when you look at how you parented your kids, your mama came out in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you can probably identify where that is. But you recognizing that, like, okay, let me rewind. You know,
Right.
now I'm still parenting my adult children, or maybe not parenting is the right word. I think you use counselor and advisor.
Right. Right.
Might look a little differently, but I
Yeah.
still think some of that parenting is there because you said, I just want to be able to tell them this and they just listen. That's the parenting piece of it. But
Right.
you know, you're going to be met with resistance for that.
Right.
Because for a long time, I did that. I know that I was a helicopter mom
Mm-hmm.
because of, my upbringing and, you know, just life lessons. And so
Mm.
I'm thinking I'm doing the right thing. I'm protecting my kids, but there's a double-edged sword to that.
And I talked to Dr. Heather the other day, and it's such a crazy position to be in because, on the one hand, and my husband and I talked about this also, there are so many amazing qualities. I'm speaking about myself and my experience that my mom has that she has instilled upon both me and my brother. Like
Mm-hmm.
her priority and values of education and the self-esteem on the one hand, like, hey, you can do everything, you can do anything you set your mind to, there's so many amazing
Mm-hmm.
and enviable things. She's amazing with finances, great with money, uh all the things that I would like to emulate. But if you split her in half, there's another half. And I'm like, I absolutely don't want to be anything like that. So
Do you
it's,
feel like she was emotionally unavailable?
well, I don't know about that. I feel like how she shows up sometimes
Mm-hmm.
is questionable. The things
Okay.
she says in her effort to motivate and inspire,
Mm-hmm.
it's like negative motivation and negative inspiration. And the one that I like to share and about what how she would handle it, she used to tell me, I would just tell you, you can't do that, or that doesn't make any sense, or I bet you can't do X, Y, and Z, because she knew me as a child
You're
would
gonna
be like,
rebel against that.
okay. But the thing is, it never stopped.
Mm-hmm.
It has not stopped. I've seen her very recently, and I don't want to share somebody else's story, but my brother expressed the same thing. She's
Mm-hmm.
still going in that old bag of tricks with the negative motivation, inspiration. So she thinks, but being grown now, we're offended. Like,
So that shift
talk
never
about it.
happened. When you talk about the motherly shift, that shift never happened
Yeah.
for your mom. And so for your mom, and that I see that in a lot of old school thinking
Yeah.
is that no, I'm the mama, you supposed to call me. I'm the mama, you supposed to make
Mhm.
sure I'm good. I'm the mama, you supposed to listen to what I say, but mama, you're not always
Right.
right. They old school thinking has a tendency to take away the child's autonomy.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's what that looks like. Sometimes people get stuck in that shift. And then you got to go back and look at, if you know, of what her mom's or father's parenting was to her.
Hmm.
And so if in her mind what she was doing worked, why would she stop?
And again, as we mentioned before in a previous conversation, at what cost? And
That,
I could say the same for Beetle. It's like she's an amazing, successful, well adjusted person, but at what cost?
mm-hmm.
And I hate to put my story in the same context with Tana and Beetle because yeah, I was going to say, even that little bit that I described, it brings a little shame and guilt to me because I know I've gotten a lot of good along with the bad, which is why I was so um, tight-lipped and uh, really shamed into even having the conversation about the negative aspects of my relationship with my mom because you
But
can't bring.
trauma is trauma. And I challenge people to, number one, you can't compare your traumas. And trauma is what's significant to the individual.
Mm,
What you missed in your upbringing with your mom is traumatizing and it impacted you. And so, regardless of all the good, there
mm-hmm,
was still something that you were still missing. I can't, I want to reference the little cartoon show where the little girl have all these core memories and
mm-hmm,
how those memories shape as she developed different core memories kind of surface. I can't even think of what it is, but it's such a, and I'm gonna send it to you. I'm gonna have to ask my daughter what it will, so you can watch it. And
uh-huh.
it's elementary, but it gives you perspective from a child's point, and it's cartoonish to
Okay.
see how it basically all of these feelings are developing from infant to I don't know how the girl is now because they got a part two to
Right.
it. But it actually shows how the different core values, core memories develop in a child.
Mm, interesting.
And so when people are searching for that basic level of understanding, they can watch it and then maybe identify, oh, wow, so I didn't have, that's not what I had. And now, oh, okay, I see that this is why I think this way.
Yeah. And I remember, and then I'm gonna move on because I just want to share this because I just feel like someone listening can maybe identify with this. One of the biggest, I should be ashamed to say this, one of the biggest arguments I had with my husband, and in the next week we will have been married 10 years. The biggest argument I had with him is he looked at me in the midst of an argument and told me I'm just like my mother.
Oh, talk
And
about a trigger.
I, ooh, man, I was like, that's it. This marriage is over. You don't even know what you're talking about. And, it's just, I was so
For
offended.
you, it felt like a slap in the face. Like, what the heck? What do you see?
I think if I would have preferred a slap in the face because that's exactly what I asked him. I said, tell me how I'm like her. You act just like her. Just typical man stuff. No, no depth. You're just like her. And I said, I feel like you're saying that because you know our dynamic, you know our relationship, and you're purposely saying it to hurt me. Tell me How am I just like her? And he couldn't. But then here we go with the guilt and shame in the backdrop. After that, I really had a lot of conversation with myself and the Lord. Like, why did that offend me so deeply and hurt me
Mhm.
so bad?
Because that's not you. You know how you view your mother, and you know the relationship. So for you, that just hurt you to the core. Now, that may not have been the best tactic that he used, and most men may not necessarily use the best tactic. There could have been another way that he could have reframed that, that
Mm-hmm.
may not have sounded so harsh, but unfortunately what he did is weaponize your trauma against you. And that's what you saw it as. So that's why that was a huge trigger. Like, wait a minute, I'm trying to work on my ish, and you gonna
Yeah.
sit up here and tell me? So yeah, absolutely, it was a trigger.
Oh man. So whew, we rebounded from that. So look, anybody out there listening, you can get past a lot of stuff with prayer, Jesus.
But
I
what you won't do,
lots of prayer, lots of quiet time.
you know what? And I'll say this too. You know, with trauma, it sometimes can give us a distorted sense of our worth.
Yeah.
And so for you to hear those words, it struck you to the core because you're like, well, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
That means what's wrong with me? Am I broken? What is this?
Yeah.
What are you really saying?
Mm-hmm. And in the back of my mind, why are you here?
Yeah.
Like, how did we get here?
I'm glad he didn't get nothing, a frying pan or something flown across the room in the midst of that.
And
So luckily you were able to regulate your emotions in that.
I honestly had to separate the words and the moment. I honestly compartmentalized it. I honestly took it as just a low blow from a fight, and I dismissed it. I really did. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't know, shoved it wherever that stuff goes once you put it in the box and seal it. But and it has not come up again. And the other thing, and that since I'm just over here oversharing, um, I have just had to realize that one of the needs that I have always had was understanding and closure. And I've had to just determine that I'm not always going to get it. And I have
Hmm.
to be okay with it.
And that's the reconciliation that you have, because sometimes you're not going to get an apology. You're
No,
not going to get the why of something. And so you have to reconcile that within yourself. And I'll again share with clients seeking, I just need closure. But you know what? You might not get the closure that you need. So you have to redefine what your closure looks like.
yeah,
And
yeah,
sometimes what that looks like is I can't change my mother. I can't change my father. I can change how I navigate, though, that relationship. And
mm,
so I have to have very secure boundaries of what I allow somebody to have access to as it relates to me. Because if you're always expecting what you want, you might always be disappointed. And
right.
every time you're disappointed, that just rips the band aid right back off.
You know what? When I was speaking with Dr. Heather, we talked about forgiveness. And
Hmm.
one of the things we talked about was you have to forgive without expectation.
Hmm. Because forgiveness is not about them, it's really about you.
Exactly.
It's freeing yourself from the psychological
Yeah.
trauma that you've endured all of these years. It's freeing for you. It's
What
not
does
about the it's not about the other person.
what does healthy forgiveness look like when a parent's wounds were never repaired?
Again, it's healing yourself from within,
Mhm. Yeah.
because you can only control you. Sometimes when we push against that because we're trying to make a person say that they were wrong. We're trying to make a person understand how they put their trauma onto us or how their parenting traumatized us. You're pushing them towards that. They're not
Yeah.
going to give you that. And so you have to again re-identify, change your narrative,
Yeah.
because you don't have to be who what you've come through. Again, manifesting something else for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Do I stay in this, or do I want something different? If I want something different, that's something that I have to do for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you again, boundaries are a heck of a thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes boundaries are hard though, because people will allow their boundaries to come down because it's my mom, because it's my dad,
Yeah.
and that doesn't have to be the case. I can forgive you, but that doesn't mean I excuse what you did.
Right. I remember having this conversation, uh, and I'm going to ask the question and I'm going to make a comment. What grief
Okay.
reactions are common when daughters accept that their mothers may never change?
Mm-hmm.
And my comment is this: in the original episode, the conversation for the podcast. Uh-oh, sorry about that. Let me start over. In the original episode of the podcast, the conversation, I shared with that group that I grieve the relationship that I thought I would have with my mom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that certainly is a process and here we go back to expectations, right? I had an expectation for having a certain type of relationship with my mom, and it's not manifesting the way I envisioned it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to that grief process? Because I think when people think about grief,
They
they're
think about death.
thinking about death, but it is a little death in a sense.
Yeah. But when we say that, of course, we're thinking 6 feet in the ground. But you can grieve relationships, whether it was a relationship with your significant other,
Mm.
whether it's you're grieving, like you said, and Tanya said the same thing. I was grieving the relationship that I wanted to have with my mom.
Right.
She had to let go of what that was. And you go through really the same stages
Hmm.
of that grief. I have to let that go, because if not, guess what? You're going to forever be grieving that piece of it.
Right.
So I have to allow myself to go through this process in order to come to the place of acceptance. Because at the end of, even though you don't really stop grieving, and when I'm saying this part is related to death, you don't stop grieving. You learn to cope with the loss. And so it's kind of the same thing with when you're grieving the relationship that you thought you wanted, or that you thought you should have, or you thought you should deserve. You come to a place of accepting that that's not what this is.
Right.
It's just not.
Yeah. And also, I'll share very recently um, that my husband went back to our hometown, and I wasn't with him, I was working. And he said to me, I'm going to call your mom and ask her to go out to lunch with me. And I wanted to fall over. I was so happy that he thought to even want to spend this time with her, because in my perfect world image, just like I hang out with his parents and I have a great relationship with his parents and want to be with them even in his absence, I always wanted that for him with my mom and with my parents. And honestly, it just never happened because I think he looks at how we go back and forth, and he hears what happens and he
Mm-hmm.
sees the effect on me, and his, you know, protection of me and of our relationship is to keep a distance. And that
Mm-hmm.
makes me sad, even though I understand it. So when he said he wanted to go out to lunch with her, I was just like, he's amazing. This is
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And they had a great lunch. And my mom, since that time and the times that we've spoken, every conversation, she was like, I am so glad he called me. We had such a nice lunch. And I'm so glad he died. Because she really enjoyed it. And I'm thinking, like, this is what I wanted. But it just, it's been elusive.
Mm-hmm.
It's been elusive and it's sad. It saddens me that our families can't just be together and get together comfortably because everybody's on edge trying to see what mom's going to do,
It's
say.
like what's that hyper vigilant. And so
Yeah.
you really can't when you talk about family gatherings, but yet through some unhealed trauma, it goes back to that unpredictability. And so
Yeah.
that's where the anxiousness or the hypervigilance come in. Like,
Mhm.
I can't really relax because I just don't know who gonna pop off first.
That.
What's gonna set whom off?
And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing because my in laws and my husband's family is the complete antithesis of mine in
Mm-hmm.
that they're a huge family. They get together often. There's never any drama. My sister-in-law and her mom have a great relationship. I know they have their stuff because they're mothers and daughters. I mean, moms can't stop momming. And it just, but it's normal mom stuff. It's not like, what's happening over here is just normal mom stuff. Like, hey, did you think about this or you want to do this? Mom, leave me alone. That I could deal with. But
Mm-hmm.
and it's embarrassing because I always, and maybe incorrectly so, feel like I need to prepare people when all the family's going to get together.
And that's your own protective factor for
Yeah.
that. I have to go into this situation and preface what might happen.
Yeah. And I feel like my in-laws are looking at me like, what kind of daughter is she? And like, what is that? And again, this is completely me and my internalization of what they might be thinking about me. So here I am with the judgment again, with the guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I was just last night talking to my husband. My brother had just called me and said that my mom had said something very offensive to him. And so he's not going to talk to her for the rest of the year. And I was like sharing what was happening with my husband. And he honestly said, he got really quiet for a long time. He said, I don't know how I would have a relationship with my parent if they said those things to me.
Mm.
And my fear came out in that, like, this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I feel judged in that because that's what we live with, these outbursts, these, you know, accusations, these things that are, you know, unfounded, not real, but they're thrown at us.
So you have to work on releasing the guilt or shame associated with behaviors that's not your own.
Yeah.
Being able to separate you from the parent and their stuff.
Hmm.
You have to let it go. And I this is a little small example, but I thought about what you said when you know, you was a single mom
Hmm.
and you had to go to work. And so you were depending on your kids to get themselves da 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 da. And very early on in that, look, if you don't want to earn your clothes, you're gonna go wrinkle. You want to wear mismatched socks, that's what you gonna that's what you gonna do. I had to laugh about that. And tell me why you wouldn't be embarrassed if they chose to wear wrinkled clothes or mismatched socks.
The reality is I would be embarrassed. However,
But
I
why though?
made a, I just made a determined because it is a reflect. So, let's go down this road. Okay, I didn't think this is where we're gonna go. First, let me answer your question. I would be embarrassed, but I
Okay.
would not act on it because I, again, picking and choosing my battles. And in the grand scheme of things, if they're mixed match, if they're wrinkled, nobody's going to die, nobody's going to get hurt. It's going to be an embarrassing point in their life, and probably one of their friends is going to call them on it, and then they're going to correct the behavior anyway. So I'm not going down that road with you.
Okay.
But
All the more reason why I then don't wear the embarrassment of something that's not mine. Because my thing is, anybody that knows me knows I'm not sending my kids out the house with wrinkled
right,
clothes or mismatched shoes.
right,
Somebody who doesn't know me, guess what? Who
you
cares?
don't know me.
Who cares? So I believe, and I had to grow in this thinking doing therapy.
Mm-hmm,
And like I learned a lot about myself through the process of becoming a therapist.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so I'm big on not wearing something that doesn't belong to me. I'm big on not wearing somebody else's guilt, not wearing somebody else's shame, not wearing somebody else's sadness, because those are my boundaries.
Yeah. One thing I determined to do, much like Tana and Beetle, with their intentionality toward parenting. I
Mm-hmm.
recognized very early on that my mom identifies too closely with me and my brother's successes or failures.
Mm-hmm.
And she takes it as a personal affront
Mm-hmm.
and a reflection of her and her ability or um, execution of parenting and mothering. And I promised myself to take it full circle back to the wrinkled clothes and mixed match socks and shoes and stuff. I promised myself that I would not be like that, that my children's successes as well as their challenges and or failures
Mm-hmm.
belong to them because I know what I provided for them.
Mm-hmm.
I know the foundation I set for them. I know the times that I've stepped in to try to help. I know all the things that I've done with the information I had at the time to be the best mom that I knew to be. And if
Mm-hmm.
that didn't work, or if it wasn't good enough, I'm sorry.
I don't know what else to tell you.
That's what
And
I
so
had.
you saying that, about your mom's aligning her self-worth with you all successes and or failure, then goes back to, or it brings me back around to when you said or shared that when you got divorced and you came back to Cleveland
Mm-hmm.
and your mom said, no, you go figure it out.
Yeah.
Because that for her may have been her saying that if you failed, then that means I failed.
Yeah.
And that's not what she wanted to see with you and the kids in her house, even though she had adequate space.
Yeah.
No, I need you to go figure that out somewhere else.
Get out of my
But it
face.
won't be in my face.
Wow. Yeah.
So
And that's
so she really did you a favor, to be honest, because can you imagine what message you might have been getting every day being
yeah.
in the house with her, what your kids would have been a witness to
Mm,
every day? Think about what that would have done.
I hadn't thought about that. That, you know what? That's a good point. And again, another full circle moment. This is exactly how we started this. Like the things that I absolutely have determined I don't want to be like her in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think even with that, and I don't disagree with the decision. I think it could have been done a little more lovingly. It
Absolutely.
could.
But again, that's the reference that she had to go off of. If
Yeah.
that wasn't the relationship that she had with her parents, and she maybe didn't recognize that that's was the case, she wasn't going to do anything different.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what she knew. Tough love, that's just it. You do it, you do anything against me, then okay, that's on you.
Yeah.
But I won't be a part of you not doing what I told you to do.
Wow.
You went to the military. How dare you?
Yeah. You didn't go
When
to
you
a HBCU? Why?
when you know your mom was big on education, but you went to the military. Oh, okay. Okay.
But I did
So,
both.
well, she ain't like that you went to
You didn't like that I didn't do it her way.
you didn't do it the way she told you to do it. And so anything after that, she like those are your consequences. You deal with your choices.
Yeah.
Now, if she was coming from a healed place, that whole dynamic would have been different, or that whole interaction would have been totally different.
Yeah.
That's why I said sometimes old school thinking sometimes is the worst to treat,
Mm-hmm.
because they're so fixated
Yeah.
on their way of thinking. And so then I have to ask, then why are you here?
And that's the other thing that I just resolved to is at this age and stage, I should have no expectations for her changing because it's just not going to happen.
But it don't mean you still don't desire for that to happen.
I do desire for it to happen, but what I have control over is me. So I change.
That part.
Yeah. And
Nothing changes until something changes. And so, because you can't control her or change her, you have to change how you even think about the relationship
yeah, yeah,
so that you can have some level of peace, and then continue to work on your own relationship with your kids.
right.
Because I think change can happen really at any stage if someone wants to,
Mm-hmm.
if you want different. I knew my shift had to happen with my kids, because what worked for them at 5 and 7 didn't work for them at 12, 13, 14, 15, and on up. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to make that shift, because I had to remember, okay, what kind of relationship do I want my kids to be afraid to tell me something because of how I might react? Or do I want them to be more open? And so my motto was, you can tell me anything you want, even if it's about me. You don't like how I'm doing something. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And if you can come to me with respect, guess what? I'm going to be flexible in my thinking to know that I don't know it all,
Yeah.
and I could be open to, okay, so you say I can be aggressive, yes, okay, I got to look at that
Mm-hmm.
and make some adjustments, because it's more about not being right but wanting my relationship with my kids.
Exactly. Exactly. And not believing that it is owed to me. Just
That
because
part.
I had these little humans, they
Mm-hmm.
don't owe me because I had them.
Yeah, they didn't ask to be here.
I think that's where I think that's where my mom, she feels like I gave you life. At a
Mm-hmm.
minimum, you should just be really creating. I think she really wanted a mini me.
I can see that. I can I can see that. How dare you not be a mini her?
Right. Like, and it's like I owe this to her because what I hear from her is, had it not been for me, had it not been for me. And I'm thinking, yes, you instilled a lot of things in me, but you cannot take credit for all of the things that I accomplished. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't blame you for all the things that I failed in.
Well, she's not gonna take the any failed stuff. She only
Right. The
wants the
fail is
success.
all on me.
Right.
Everything I
That's on
did
you.
right
But
is
your
from her.
successes is all on her.
Matter of fact, everything that's wrong with me is from my dad. Let her.
That's the old school. That's the old school thinking.
Wow. Any other thoughts? Those were all my questions.
I just know, like I said, it just, as a therapist, I'm never too in my profession to think that I can't grow either, which is why I'm always interested in hearing. I had no idea when you talked about this in the beginning and I signed on to do it. I really didn't understand. I understood the concept, but I
Yeah.
didn't understand the in-depthness of it.
Ooh, I
I,
like.
I, I really didn't. So I'm always taken back by what I'm getting from hearing people's story, because I told you I'm an observer, and
Mm-hmm.
I like to process other people's stuff, because then that helps me to be a better therapist. When Beetle talked about being invested and committed to the therapeutic process so much that I need to make sure that I'm aligned and the person is relatable to
Mm,
me, because that is so important. I don't care how many letters you have behind your name. If you're hiding behind the context in the books, you
right.
missing something. You have to be able to relate to people in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And in our culture, we all have our stories. And so even though, I had my motherly stuff
Yeah.
going, or daughterly stuff going on, and it may not have been, like I say, our trauma is our trauma. But
Yeah.
I'm so big on the healing aspect of it, because think of how much you can offer to the world in a healed space versus versus an unhealed space.
Mm-hmm.
And so I applaud anybody. Therapy was taboo in our culture, but it's
Right.
so much more widely accepted now.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we don't have the tools to be able to get us to that next level.
Yeah.
Beto came so far because she allowed herself to be vulnerable when she got to a place of where she's trusting the therapeutic process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why she's where she is. Tanya, what I hope for her is that she does, because I think it would just propel her so far into, being the person that she wants to be. I
Mm-hmm.
believe she still has more healing to do before she gets into a relationship. Because when you're your best healed, authentic self, guess what? That red flag is going to be that red flag.
Right.
And your self worth is going to be so ingrained in your healing that you're not going to believe that you accept anything less than
Right. Because then you'll start attracting exactly what you want.
that part. And she said, I tend to get people who are broken.
Yeah. Because she's naturally a nurturer.
She's naturally a nurturer and a fixer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to fix you. But sometimes that's a double-edged sword, because you can fix somebody so well that now they leaving, because now I'm too good for this now. You done got me together.
Yeah.
And
Very.
so that's why it's important for people to make sure before they're in relationships after dealing with trauma that you make sure that you're healed. Because
Mm,
when you're healed, you break the generational curse.
yeah.
And even though she hadn't got to that full circle of healing, she's had some healing, again,
Right.
because she had her, which was a saving grace for her in her story.
Right.
But you can tell, even listening to her when she tears up, that there's still some work um that
Right.
she
It's
has to do.
still
And
very
my,
much on the surface. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And my hope for her is that she does that, because she'll see on the other side of that it's going to look so totally different.
Mm-hmm.
So I can only thank you again for the opportunity. You
For the
just made me
challenge.
think a little bit, and the challenge, you just made me think a little bit. I'm like, I thought I was working for the week. Done working for the week. I guess not.
No, I really want to thank you. I want to thank you for entertaining this conversation and for, educating me and anyone else who's listening on some different definitions and aspects of therapy and the meaningfulness behind it. I want to thank you for trusting this crazy process and, this idea that wasn't fully flushed, and it just continues to, I am flying the plane and building it at the same time. So thanks for trusting me in that. And thanks for this conversation today. It was really, really good.
Absolutely. Well, the good thing about all of this is, again, there's healing just because people have trauma. And I think, you had kind of alluded to this before, or, some guidelines that you had given. You had talked a little bit about the nervous system and how the nervous system plays a role, in that our brains can be rewired to rewrite our story if we so desire. We just need all of the pieces and parts to be there. We have to recognize what those pieces and parts are so that we can start to put it together. So, am I done working for the day?
Yes, ma'am. I'm released. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
As we close today's conversation with therapist Cherie White, I want to take a moment to let the weight of what we've discussed truly settle. Cherie helped us peel back layers that many of us carry quietly. Layers shaped by childhood experiences, emotional invisibility, attachment wounds, and the survival strategies we learned long before we had words for them. What we hear today is that healing isn't just about looking back. It's about understanding how the past continues to echo in our present. In the way we love, the way we protect ourselves, the way we show up in relationships, and even the way we parent. It reminded us that trauma doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like never feeling seen. Sometimes it looks like always being the strong one. Sometimes it looks like smiling through hurt you've never fully named. And yet, woven throughout her insight was the consistent message that resiliency is real, but so is the cost of carrying everything alone. So here are a few takeaways I want you to hold on to. Your story matters, and it deserves your attention. Ignoring your pain doesn't lessen the impact. Naming it is the first step toward healing. Survival skills are powerful, but they are not always sustainable. What protected you as a child may be hindering you as an adult. Give yourself permission to outgrow old patterns. You don't have to repeat what you came from. Just like Tana and Beetle, you can choose a different path, one built on intention, awareness, and courage. Healing isn't linear, but it is possible. You don't have to be perfect to seek wholeness. You just have to be willing. Relationships can only be as healthy as the people in them. And that includes you. Self-examination isn't selfish. It's foundational. As you leave this episode, I want to gently challenge you to sit with yourself and ask, are the relationships in my life nourishing me or draining me? Am I fulfilled or am I simply functioning? Am I emotionally present or am I emotionally performing? And maybe the most important question, what would healing make possible for me? If today's conversation stirs something in you, confusion, clarity, discomfort, hope, let that be your sign to take the next step. That might mean journaling, having an honest conversation, setting a boundary, or seeking therapy or counseling with a trained professional who can help you navigate your story with compassion and guidance. You do not have to heal in isolation. You do not have to repeat the cycles you inherited. And you absolutely do not have to settle for emotional experiences that leave you empty. You deserve joy. You deserve safety. You deserve relationships that see you, support you, and honor the fullness of who you are becoming. This is the Motherly Shift. I thank you for listening. I thank you for showing up and for doing the courageous work of self-examination. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.